So thank you all for joining Luxury Institute's webinar today on creating a high-performance relationship building system. You'll gain a behind-the-scenes look into the research and performance of Luxury Institute's new online education course, The Mastery of High Net Worth Relationship Building. Just a few details before we begin. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared tomorrow, whether you attended or were not able to join us today. If you have questions as Milton is going through, please do use the Q&A box located on your screen. We will address as many questions as we can during the last 5 to 10 minutes. So Milton, take it away.
Thank you, Katie. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to thank Catherine Sousa and Ella Roberts for all the support in putting together not only this program, but all the research. Particularly Katie's been with us for 8 years, so thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. As Katie said, we're going to share a behind-the-scenes look into the research and performance of our online education course, The Mastery of High Net Worth Relationship Building. I think the first thing to say is that we are a research institute. There's a reason why we call ourselves an institute. We're empirically based. So everything that we do, our research, our consulting, our training is based on empirical research. And I'm going to walk you today through a lot of that and tell you a few stories that I think you'll find interesting and helpful. Whether you come and join our course, I think there's a lot of takeaways that you can take if you want to build your own program, and that's our objective. So go back to 2010. We're working with Bottega Veneta, with CEO Marco Bizzarri and head of North America, Gianluca Flore. They were growing well. They were known as the Italian Hermes because their handbags, the Intrecciata, were phenomenal, coveted by high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. But they came to us and they said, look, we have a problem. We have a bottleneck. While we have great products and great venues in our stores, we have a bottleneck in that our associates are predominantly afraid or intimidated by these very wealthy customers, or they're unengaged. They're not engaged. They're not proactive. And they're not demonstrating their great humanity, their great emotional intelligence. And we said, we've been working on a system that is empirically based. It's a continuous improvement. We're always making adjustments and improvements. Would you be interested in trying? And they did. Their sales doubled over the next 3 years, which was their objective. And we were off to the races on building the Luxcelerate system. So what does it take to create a high-performance relationship building system? This is essentially the agenda of what I'm going to share today. It takes science. So we study performance science, and I'm going to share with you examples. Neuroscience, the science of how the brain works, plasticity, neuroplasticity, emotional intelligence, but very importantly also the best practices of the highest sales performers across dozens of categories, what we call the people we call the hyper performers. And of course, we always need to have a finger on the pulse of the voice of the high net worth and ultra high net worth clients across the world. I'm going to show you how we conduct that research. From that research emanated what we call the pillars, the 5 pillars, where we were able to define and distill emotional intelligence into these 5 actionable pillars that can be executed in every single client interaction to enhance performance and to deliver an extraordinary experience to the client. And from performance science, we learned that you need a process. So we provide a process that aligns the science and the pillars to help your people, your team members, become high-performance relationship builders. And again, from performance science, especially sports, we like to treat our clients as elite mental athletes. And so we established a daily routine that's built on preparation, practice, measurement, assessment, self-assessment, and self-coaching if you don't have a coach. So we reinforce the process and drive measurable results. And then finally are the results, the outputs. And you can see some very significant increases in sales. We always stick around to measure month by month what's happening so we can make adjustments and so we can prove that the system works. So let's start with the science. I told you that we covered several different areas. So let's go for it. First, it's performance science. And here's some examples of books. The reason we selected these books is because they have a lot of empirical research. They cover a lot of studies in summary. We went back to those studies and literally went study by study to learn what really makes the difference in performance science. So there's a book called The Success Equation by a gentleman from Columbia University named Michael Mauboussin, who works in financial services. And he identified through his studies that business is a game of both luck and skill, controllable, non-controllable factors, and to what percentages. He put percentages on chess, almost 100% skill, roulette, almost 100% luck, and then business, 50-50. And so what he said was, when you have a game of luck and skill, you need a system, as in poker, you need a set of rules, and you need to practice those to achieve high performance. That was a very good learning from Mauboussin. The greatest learning that we had was from the father of expertise, the father of performance, Anders Ericsson, who has now passed away. But we had an opportunity to work with Dr. Ericsson, and we asked him point blank, Dr. Ericsson, can we apply this to sales associates, to relationship building? And he said, absolutely. But what you need to know is that the differences in levels of expertise reflect a lifelong period of deliberate practice, a special type of practice. It is not mostly genetic. You can have a 7-foot basketball player who does not have the skills, and he or she will not be able to achieve top performance. And then talent is overrated by Jeff Colvin is a better, let's say a clearer study of what Dr. Ericsson did. And he talks about what really separates world-class performers in any field from everybody else, from the average. And he talks about this, the insight from Colvin is that the best performers set goals that are not about the outcome, like a sales goal. They're about the inputs, the process of reaching the outcome. And we'll cover that a little bit later. And then there's, of course, Daniel Coyle, who studied enclaves of performance where you should not have performance. Why are female professional golf players in Korea the world's best when there is no legacy of playing golf in Korea? What created that environment of top performance? So we studied that and put that in our programs. And then finally, there's Atul Gawande. And I'll tell you a quick story because he says better is possible. He's a surgeon, and he has applied all these methods to his own practice. It doesn't take genius, which is what Anders Ericsson said. It takes diligence. It takes moral clarity, the intent to do good. It takes ingenuity, creativity, and above all, it takes a willingness to try. One of the greatest case studies that we learned from was cystic fibrosis, which is a disease where children used to die. It's a disease of the lungs. It clogs the lungs with mucus, and people used to die as children. Today, there are people who are 80 years old, mostly in their 60s and 50s, who live a whole life having cystic fibrosis. And he identified that even though all of the clinics had well-intentioned doctors, competent people, competent staff, good equipment, good processes, there were the outliers who dramatically outperformed and would help people live to the age of 50 when everybody else was helping them live into their teens. And what accounted for that? And so we learned a great deal from that case study, which most people say, what does that have to do with luxury? And we like to say everything because it's about high performance. So this is the science, some examples of the science of performance. And then we needed to learn about emotional intelligence because that's a key element in relationship building. So we studied Daniel Goleman, who's a psychiatrist who did not invent emotional intelligence, but who developed very, very strong systems around emotional intelligence. And he defined what the core competencies of emotional intelligence were, along with Yale and Stanford and other universities. Now, Goleman says that emotional intelligence accounts for 80% of career success. Whatever the number is, we know that with the advent of AI, it's probably close to that. That as AI takes over rote tasks, we'll probably have to be consummate relationship builders and highly skilled in emotional intelligence. Mark Brackett also does great research and teaches us that every moment is a choice, every customer interaction is a choice. And no matter how frustrating or boring, constraining, painful, oppressive an experience can be, and sometimes they are, we can always choose how to respond instead of react. And finally, neuroscientist Paul Zak, with whom we have a great relationship. He's the neuroscientist who has studied oxytocin. They call it the love chemical, but it's really the trust chemical. It's the chemical that connects us to other people. It makes us feel what other people feel, empathy. It has the power to regulate our emotional responses and pro-social behaviors. How do we respond positively, even to a challenging experience? And that includes trust, trustworthiness, empathy, how we process bonding cues, and positive communication. So we worked with Paul Zak to learn his techniques. So we covered performance science in the previous slide and emotional intelligence in this slide. Now, one of the most important elements of our research is that we have a network of sales associates, usually the top associates, who become friends and colleagues with us. And so thousands of those people that we have trained or who have taught us. We have conducted interviews with the highest performing sales professionals in all of these fields. Real estate, private aviation, fashion leather goods, you can see it, wealth management, even the legal profession, and even in doctors' clinics. And so we've understood and we've always interviewed them one-on-one or in groups. One of the key questions we have always asked them is, what makes the difference? What are the critical elements that define an expert versus the average and the novice performers? And we were once told a story. One of the top sales associates at one of the top luxury fashion brands said to us, I'm not going to give you the elements. I'm going to tell you a story. And a woman is coming into the boutique and she's carrying bags from the boutique and she looks livid. She is angry. What does the novice say? And what does the expert say? The novice says, she said to us, oh my God, that lady looks angry. Oh, Jesus. And she's carrying bags from the store. That means she's going to return stuff. Oh, man. And she's going to prevent me from selling to people who really want to buy. I don't want to deal with these problems. I'm going in the back. And then she said, now this is what the expert does. The expert says, oh my God, that lady looks like she's in such pain. Oh God, I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to nurture her. I'm going to solve her problem. I'm going to reassure her. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of it immediately. And then I'm going to make her happy. I'm going to sell her 5 new things that she can use to enjoy her life even more. That's the difference, she said, between an expert and a novice. And a lot of it has to do with the elements of fear, confidence, emotional intelligence, empathy, trustworthiness. And we injected that in our program. Another example, we learned from a real estate associate that every time he got rejected, he didn't get the listing of the $20 million home, he would send thank you notes, whereas all the other agents would not. And so he would send a note and saying, Mrs. Jones, thank you so much for taking the time to consider listing with us. I really enjoyed the experience. I know you made a better decision for yourself right now, the best decision you could make. I wish you the absolute success in selling your home, and I'm always here for you. And why did he do that? Because 10 to 15% of the customers have a bad experience with the agent that they choose. And they always come back to the person who treated them with dignity, even though they reject them. These are just some examples of what we learned from the sales associates, from interviewing thousands of hyper-performing sales associates. And then, of course, there's the client. And we're blessed with a network of over 400 families and individuals who are billionaires, centimillionaires, people with a net worth usually above 30, 40, $50 million globally. And so we know that they are the most educated, the most discerning, and yes, the most demanding clients you can have on this planet. They have unparalleled expectations, especially when it comes to the experience, the overall experience a professional provides. And this is very important because everybody's after them, because they feel a little bit put upon, like a wallet instead of a human being. They want to be treated as a human being. And yes, they're willing and able and happy to create a relationship with those professionals with whom they work, who have empathy and trust and generosity. But that wasn't enough for us. We conduct one-on-one interviews with these families on an ongoing basis for our clients, for ourselves. but we also conduct an annual State of the Luxury Industry report. And in that report that we conducted for almost 20 years, today we do it more on a custom basis because our clients want to put in their own questions. We do that on a custom basis. But we always ask the question, which attributes are most required of professionals to provide luxury services? And every year we would get the same answer. A majority would say, of course, you have to be an expert, because if you're not an expert, then I don't want to deal with you because I know more than you. But also we want that person to be an expert on people, on human beings, on how to treat people with humanity. And then, of course, I need to be able to trust them. I need to know that they're here to serve my interests, to protect, enhance, and promote my interests as well as their own. I need to know. I need to trust them. And then empathy. They need to ask me questions, not to sell me, not to create a transaction, but to help me, to guide me. I want to be guided, but I need them to get me. We had a story from one professional who was managing the estates of two very famous, two of the wealthiest families on the planet. And she said, the thing they had in common is that they would always come to me and say, I don't want to work with that person. Why? Because they can't show me they know me. They don't get me at all. It's so easy to get me. I'm like stating what I need and what I want, and I'm doing it with grace, but they still don't want to get me. So empathy matters tremendously. And then finally, and I will say that in a business setting, it surprised us a little bit, it's the need for generosity, for kindness. One sales associate told us that he overheard the client saying, look, we have to rush this meeting because we have to go find a nursing home for mom. This was a family had just moved in to the neighborhood and he was helping them. And he said, if you don't mind, I overheard what you said that you need to move this meeting quickly. Here's some numbers of nursing homes that I think you'll find trustworthy. Had nothing to do with, in this case, buying a very ultra luxury car, but everything to do with generosity. And so those are the kinds of learnings that we have from the top sales associates about the high net worth clients. And that's what we apply into our program. One of our clients, one of our large brands said, you know, just like Goldman identified, help you identify the top 20% of the elements that drive a great client experience with emotional intelligence. And just like your clients did that with your survey, you've been able to identify the essential emotional intelligence elements that deliver 90% of an extraordinary client experience, and that leads you to build long-term relationships. So those are the pillars. This is what we distilled all the learning from Goldman and Yale University and Stanford University, which each have dozens of core competencies that unfortunately people can't really learn and apply in the moment. We distilled it into 5 essential pillars. Number 1, expertise, and I've defined expertise. Empathy, the ability to ask great questions and listen to help. Trustworthiness, the ability to demonstrate verbally and non-verbally with all the cues, because all their 5 senses are taking you in, to demonstrate that you are here to serve them, to protect, enhance, and promote their best interests, like a fiduciary. And then the generosity we've talked about has nothing to do with discounts, points, or any kind of financial. It has to do everything with listening, observing, and then doing something, a kind gesture that costs no money, but that goes a long way. And I'll give you an example. Someone, a multi-billionaire friend of ours, told us that every year their family goes to a certain hotel in the Maldives. And the general manager knows them, and every year he or she, their team, take a picture of the family. And every year when they come back, there's a photo frame of the previous year's vacation. Sometimes there's 3 photos of the first one and the third time they came, and the family just loves it. And they look forward to going to that resort because they want to see which photo of their previous year's vacation is going to be put up for them. Simple little details that express generosity. And as I said from previous slides, we needed to put a process in place. It doesn't happen by itself. You can teach someone in a webinar, in a course, in one day, but it goes away if you don't reinforce it. So we created a reinforcement process. First, we created context. We help you understand that this is about living your purpose. It's not just about a job. And we teach you how to embrace humility so you can learn to learn continuously, and how to conquer your fears, the fears of change, failure, the fear of rejection, which many people feel when they're dealing with high net worths and ultra high net worths, even though it's not the intent of the client. How do you conquer those? And then how do you conduct such a focused experience with the client that you get into a zone, the way that athletes get into zones? And then we teach you how to play, how to be creative with everything you're learning. And then we have a section on leading with emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is something you have to understand and learn and master. And then we put an entire program so you can achieve self-mastery. So we provide the scientific, the empirical research, and combine that with the pillars to help the people become high-performance relationship builders. And of course, as we said previously, and I've said this example today on LinkedIn, Serena Williams and LeBron do not learn. People say, well, AI is going to teach me how to be emotionally intelligent. No, you're going to have to practice live, and then you're going to have to engage with the client. And so we give you a daily routine that allows you to prepare, practice, measure. We even ask you to measure how many times, how many opportunities did you have to be generous, and what were the missed opportunities that you had to be generous. You assess, you self-coach, and we give you a system to reinforce the process and drive measurable results. Here are the results of one client. 64% average increase month over month. And the idea here of the whole system is that we enable individuals and teams to highly improve their confidence in taking positive and effective action. And here I want to point something out. Usually the top 20% of the sales associates are driving 80 to 90% of the performance. A lot of those salespeople think that they're the best because they're the best in the brand. But what we've shown them is, but you're not the best in the industry, and you should have no limits. We've been able to help top performers increase their sales 50% because they think they peak because they're rated #1 in the company, but they're far from their potential. And that, I think, is one of the great insights of the program. And on the other hand, there are people who have a conversion rate of 5%. They can take that to 10%. So you get an overall shift in the performance curve of the company. And that's how you get to on the 4th month, 84%, almost doubling the sales. It's not magic, it's a system. This is one of the best testimonials, and it's typical of the testimonials we get. Through this process, I achieved a 101% increase in sales in 6 months. And I love that. But what I love most is that while I have better and more client relationships at work, I've seen significant improvement in my personal life and the relationships I have with my family and my friends. And to me, that's what this is all about. And I will echo that and say, at the Luxury Institute, all that empirical research is so that we can get to this experience for a human being. And to us, that's what all that research and this process and this system is all about. Now, we've covered how we build it. We've given you a behind the scenes look of how we put this together. And I'll just cover the agenda of the course. The first part is context. How do you become a high performance relationship builder? Why? How? What are some of the elements you need to rewire your brain to understand and incorporate? And then, of course, emotional intelligence is critical. So we have a very extensive section. But it would be nothing to learn those concepts if you did not have a system, a routine to achieve self-mastery. You need a daily routine to master. We learned that from Dr. Erickson, from Jeff Colvin, from Dan Coyle. We learned that from the book Practice Perfect. Our course is $295. I think you may be well aware, many of you have looked it up. It's 2+ hours. It's video, it's case studies, lots of case studies, like some of the examples I gave you. and you get to self-assess, and it's self-guided. Now, a lot of brands, a lot of companies are calling us and saying, well, we want you to overlay that with weekly calls or monthly calls or every 2 weeks to coach our people, and we're willing to do that. But we did design it so that it's self-contained, so that as a sales associate, as a person who runs a boutique, your own boutique as an entrepreneur, you can take this entire system and use it daily and master high net worth relationship building. I'm going to stop there. I think I'm going to hand it over to Katie next.
Thank you, Milton. So opening it up for questions, thank you to those of you who have submitted questions. The first one that came in is about the creativity pillar and why it's integrated throughout the other pillars, Milton.
This is something we discovered. Thank you for that question. When you use robotic scripted training, it never works. Human beings are not designed to be robots. They're designed to be creative. So in relationship building, we give you the framework of the expertise, the empathy, the trustworthiness, and the generosity, but we don't script it for you because every client interaction is different. Every client is different. Every situation is different, so that when you come in your mind and saying, okay, how do I demonstrate my expertise, my empathy, my trustworthiness, my generosity, you are inspired and empowered to use your creativity to make every experience different. Maybe I'm not going to do the photo at the hotel this year. Maybe I'm going to do something else. So that's where creativity is something that you must inject into the program so that people feel empowered and inspired to serve the client and get full joy out of serving the client. One of the things we've learned is that people who deliver extraordinary experiences to other human beings, be it their client or their loved ones, feel tremendous joy and health benefits from doing so. So that's why the creativity, the freedom to be a human being as we were designed is so important.
Thank you. Another question that just came in is someone who has actually already completed the course, and their question is related to how they actually use the self-mastery system, how they implement it as a daily routine, and whether we provide examples that are specific to their industry, which is just so happens to be insurance, not necessarily, let's say, real estate or luxury sales. And yes, that is something that we are providing. We actually are discussing adding additional course offerings where we can exclusively for your industry identify, or for your individual team, what are the metrics that should be utilized, how to practice, what are the particular skills that are needed and required within your industry to make the most of that daily routine. And then in tandem with that, there was also a question related to, there's the self-coaching portion, but is there a coaching portion for coaches? So Milton, I'll hand that to you.
Yes. In big companies, especially, there are managers, there are supervisors, there are store managers, all kinds of management individuals who we teach not only how to coach, but we also teach the associates how to be coached. Because one thing is to try to coach, and the other one is to be coached, to accept the coaching. And then when you can get that integrated, you can have great success. So for example, when you're coaching and you're talking 70% of the time, you're not coaching, you're mentoring. You need to listen, and you need to help the individual who's being coached to come up with their own answers, their own solutions, and not until they have used their creativity and empowered themselves to learn to be creative about how do I solve this problem, have you really begun to coach. And then the other thing is that when you are coaching someone, you do not say, oh, what a great job that was. You did a great job. Those are all abstract, meaningless statements. You have to say, Katie, I love the way you asked that question because you put these sentences first, you put these subjects first. And then what I also like is that you pause to let the client speak. When you're giving very clear coaching directions about what they can improve and what you know works for them, that's coaching. Everything else is rah-rah mentoring, and it doesn't work. So yes, we teach how to coach, and we teach how to be coached.
Thank you, Milton. One of the, this is probably one of the best questions I've ever seen, is what are some of key metrics that are non-output based? Meaning, how do we create, within the measurement portion, what are metrics that should be tracked that are not necessarily specific on an output base, but are far more behavioral?
It's interesting. So each industry has their own metrics that we create very often with the client. So in the retail, let's say apparel industry, we have the fitting room metric, which means, question is, did I inspire? How many clients did I inspire to go to the fitting room and try something on? Not coerce, inspire. Not push, inspire. And then, how many garments did they try on? Because we know that when a client invests time to go into the fitting room, the probability of buying is astronomically off the charts. And clients say, if I invested my time to try something on, I better walk out of here with something I love. In the auto industry, there's the test drive metric. But not just, oh, did you inspire them to go on a test drive? There's a whole bunch of metrics around how did you treat the individuals, the spouse, the children? Did you make certain adjustments to the car? So every industry, insurance, wealth management, real estate, has their own metrics that are input metrics. If you did those things right, the probability that the output metric, the sale, is going to go up dramatically increases. And so those are some examples, and we customize those for industries.
One of the other things to add on to that, Milton, one of the favorite teams I have that we've worked with is the return and exchange. So we worked with a team that was specific to e-com and only handled inbound challenges, returns, exchanges, repairs, you name it. And one of the metrics that they particularly came up with was around the recovery rate. Am I able to transform this negative situation when someone reaches out and says their necklace broke or their watch is broken, or I want to exchange this, or I want to return this? How do I turn that into an opportunity to create a client for life? And within that team alone, I believe their results were closer to 40% within 6 months of transforming people who came in to return and made sales in exchange, but without the intention to sell, solely to solve their problem, to be generous and kind, were they able to achieve those results. So thank you for sharing that. The final question is just basically around how to get started. So once I go through this training, once I go through the 2 to 3 hours of self-guided coaching, what next? What do I do? How do I really start to put this into practice?
I'll give my answer, and if you want to add your answer, you start the next day or you start today. There's a workbook that shows you how to prepare, how to practice. And so, for example, let's just say I'm a wealth advisor or a real estate advisor or at a retail store. And one of my biggest challenges is that I'm not really good at gaining referrals. I think it's all organic. So, oh, I serve my client well. I'm not going to ask for referrals because, it's awkward. No, you begin to practice. Some of the greatest performers, top performers in the private jet industry are people who get referrals by asking for them graciously. Katie, if you know, I love serving you and I really appreciate your relationship. If you know anyone that I can serve the same way, please let me know. So there's a lot of technique and you can practice that 20 different ways. Because just like LeBron James and Stephen Curry, you want to dribble 2 basketballs during your practice and touch the green and red light just like they do. Just Google it. Because they torture test themselves. So figure out 20 ways to ask for referrals and 20 ways to get rejected. And then figure out a way to respond or figure out a way to not get rejected. And it doesn't mean that the same exact situation is going to happen with the client. It means that you became so agile at referrals that whatever the client says, you'll be able to, again, respond, not react, and in a high probability way that will achieve that referral. And that's what you do. You immediately get to practicing. We have several steps. And Katie, I'll hand it over to you to answer that even to enhance that.
Sure, of course. Honestly, as Milton said, just start. It just takes the fear out of it. Just start. It's never going to be perfect. And I think that's what you'll learn as going through the course is the goal is not to be perfect, but to practice in a perfect way so that you can execute at the highest level in the moment when it matters. And the same applies when you actually put all of the elements of the process and the daily routine and even emotional intelligence into play. It's not going to be perfect, but the probability of perfection because you have practice is much higher. So download the self-mastery workbook. Even if you'd like to take a look at it before you dive into the training course, it is available for you. Again, it's a 2+ hour course for $295. It's also highly tax deductible. So that's also a great perk. One of the teams we're about to start working with in the next several weeks, we will be working with them on a bi-weekly basis. So all of their team members have already taken the course. Now we're going to hone in on what to practice, how to actually put things into practice, what metrics they'll be tracking. And then through that, we provide direct coaching. But what we also do is create train the trainer models within teams. So whether you're an individual who's looking for that or a team that is looking for that, you should be coaching and teaching each other so that it is embedded within your culture as opposed to constantly needing outside support. So that's really what we bring within this course. And I think you all will enjoy it. If you have any questions, we are here to listen. Please reach out to the emails provided here, or you can reach out on luxuryinstitute.com. We want to thank you for joining us today. Milton, I'll give you the last word.
Good luck and great skill. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.